okay lah.
It's okay to be seen eating in the front row. I met you were in the prize last one.
Yeah, Japanese.
Good evening, everyone. Colleague.
Oh yes.
Yes, thank you for coming tonight. We are very honored that we have an ambassador in our midst, the Honorable Ahmad Mokhtar Selat. He has been on a diplomatic mission for 36 years in covering 8 countries. He's taught in several institutions of higher learning and is currently teaching at Sultan Idris Education University. Datuk Ahmad wrote several articles, and some of them were based on his experiences as he was held on hostage in Lima. I'm sure you all heard about this, the Peruvian hostage when Fujimori was around here. So I'm keeping this very short because what he has to say will be very interesting. He's touching on a topic that we're not very exposed to. I mean, we know what doctors do, nurses, teachers, but very rarely do we get a chance to hear on an insight on what a diplomat does. Thank you. Please welcome the Honorable Datuk Ahmad.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A few ladies here, many gentlemen. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. As I've been in the diplomatic service for 36 years, I've seen the good side of it and the bad side of it. So this is the first time that I'm talking in front of non-academicians. Normally I've been talking to academicians and the top civil servants at Tunku. So the topic is history of Malaysian diplomacy. First is, what is diplomacy? We always say that, oh, please be diplomatic in your behavior. So what does it really mean? So it means conduct of international relations. Human being conduct of relations with another human being by negotiation, propaganda, or enforced law, and by other peaceful means. So when you talk about being diplomatic to another human being, you use tact and be tactful. Use intelligence, that. So this is a definition by one professor who is teaching diplomacy in this marriage. So when a country goes to war, that means diplomacy has failed. Or when you go to war, that means the diplomats have failed in their job. They have given up. You give it to the soldiers to go and solve the problem. So you use force. So that's why we see that American diplomacy has failed in some areas and all the steps. When they talk about diplomats are those involved in diplomacy. You implement the foreign policy of a country. You don't make the foreign policy. Foreign policy is made by your political leaders. When I was in foreign ministry, I don't make foreign policy. But in the making of foreign policy, we have our role. We advise the government. The inputs come from this. Next, it's up to you to make a decision. Next one, please. When it comes to foreign policy, policy varies from one prime minister to another. Reason being, each individual has got different characteristics. You see Mahathir, very assertive. He would say, he would call a state a state. Pala, as a typical government servant, would smile at you. Or if he became prime minister, he would sweet. Would snow. And then we have the Abdul Rahman, British gentleman. He believes in his British values, democracy, and then diplomacy, and then what we call this. He was a perfect gentleman in that sense. And Tun Razak was also trained in Britain. He was quite different from Abdul Rahman. Abdul Rahman didn't believe in socialism whatsoever. But many people didn't know that when Tun Razak was a student, he was active in the Malaysian Society too. Yes. But he was also a member of the Fabian group, the socialist group. That's why he did. He became the Prime Minister. We became friendly with the socialist communist countries. We even recognized China during the days of we recognized China during the premiership of Razak. So I got Tunku, very pragmatic. You might say, why is so pragmatic? We pack ourselves to the British. But then, when we achieved our independence, we didn't even have what we call as the, we didn't even have a navy. We didn't even have a ship. We don't even have, we had only one aeroplane, the aeroplane that has been displayed in front of the museum. That's the only plane that we had. We only had an army. 9 battalion is 750 per battalion. 750 times 10, 7,500 soldiers. If we were suddenly able to expand the armed forces, we don't have money, there's opportunity cost. Then we will be building less schools, more barracks, isn't it? Less partner, more ammunition, this and that. So that's the opportunity cost. Razak, of course, we changed the foreign policy because the environment also has changed. Britain was not interested in becoming a superpower anymore. They were withdrawing their soldiers overseas. They were withdrawing their army in from Malaysia and Singapore. And the agreement that we had with them was the Anglo-Malay defense agreement. It was turned into an arrangement. Arrangement is different from an agreement. There was Mahathir. Some people call this foreign policy adventurous, very adventurous, jumping from one continent to another, one issue to another. International activism. He wanted to change the system, new economic order, new financial economic order, new world order, and the rest. And of course, post Mahathir, we have got Badawi and Najib. I was at the Eighth Submission Conference when the new Prime Minister takes over. He will call all the diplomats and will give his peace of mind what he would like to do in terms of foreign policy. So, Badawi told us all the ambassadors, we can disagree without being disagreeable. So we can disagree in a nice way. So Mahathir used to disagree in quite a nasty way. We didn't know the comma. What we call it, he would take the microphone and speak up. So in diplomacy, if you are not happy with certain thing, we have got the ambassadors. So that's why I said diplomatic channel. So we got the ambassador. If they are not happy with the American policy, they have got the ambassadors. And the ambassador over here, they can call the ambassador and tell them, this is the position of our country, we are not happy with you, this and that. Sometimes why you see the prime ministers change the foreign policy? One is because of the character of the person. Leadership style differs from one PM to another. Of course, in diplomatic theory we call it idiosyncratic factor, the idiosyncrasies of an individual. Then changing domestic situation. Yeah, during those days, we were not that friendly with China because we got the CPM, Communist Party of Malaya. So in 1990, they gave up. So then we changed our policy towards China. So before 1990, it's difficult for you to go to China. You can't go to China because our relation with China was government to government, not people to people. So we didn't even allow the Chinese to come in. So now we allow them to come in, plus all the dollars. And therefore, there's changing external environment. There's environment. World politics changed over time. During those days, the Americans were fighting against the Russians, but they didn't fight each other. They fought each other in another countries, in Vietnam, in Korea, in Germany, this and that. Then at the end of the Cold War, then that is the end of the Cold War. Then if we don't change our foreign policy will become outdated, isn't it? And when the Americans also changed their policy, they withdrew from Vietnam and left the nest to solve. So we have to adjust our policy. Of course, now we have got globalization, and people talk about political Islam. We have to change. At one time, we encouraged our people to become mujahideen, to go to Afghanistan. It was a big mistake on hindsight. You know, all the soldiers went there, they worked and they fought under the mujahideen, then suddenly they see, oh, we can fight, you know, in the name of Islam. So when they came back, they brought back a technique of taking bombs, how to organize demonstrations, this and that. So we had this problem of terrorism. The terrorists, they were Indonesians, in the context of Indonesia. The bomb makers were Malaysians, from Joko or from Malacca. Brilliant person, stellar student from Malay College, for example. First class honors graduate, but he was very good at making bombs. But he didn't detonate the bomb. It was done by someone else, isn't it? And the victims were not Indonesian. They were going for the Caucasians, particularly in Indonesia and Australia. So, next slide. Yes. Tunku's foreign policy. He is actually very pragmatic. He didn't believe in narrow nationalism, just like he didn't behave like Ahmad Mokhtar. He didn't behave like Idi Amin. Idi Amin said, "Oh, Indians can go home. We don't need you." Ahmad Mokhtar very inward looking. But Tunku was very pragmatic, and we can see when you were in school. I'm sure some of you are as old as I am. When I was in Columbia, so one of the best schools outside Sremban. My headmaster was still a white man until I was in Form 1. When I went to King George Free School, the premier school in Negeri Sembilan, the headmaster was still a white man. My English teacher was still a white man from Britain. And I liked him until to this day. I thought that he was a brilliant guy. And when I went to university and became a diplomat, I told myself, well, I think I'm as brilliant as he was. Because he could talk to us about Montez, about Hobbes, Locke, and all these things, and was teaching us GP. And I really fancied him. So the Malaysianization process was very gradual. We didn't ask the Britishers to leave our country immediately. We allowed them to be here, and we prepared our people to take over from them. Otherwise, you know, like Idi Amin, who was he? He was a sergeant. He was a sergeant, suddenly he became a field marshal. This fantastic promotion. And then he became the president of Uganda. And then of course, we were also, as I mentioned, we were very practical. For the defense of Malaysia, we had UNGAD, Anglo-Malaya Defense Agreement. It was an agreement with Britain. We allowed them to have bases over here. But of course, they didn't enjoy extraterritoriality like the Americans in the Philippines. They enjoyed extraterritoriality. But the British didn't have that. But it doesn't mean that Britain loved us that much. There was a consensus of conflicts of interest. They had to defend their wealth over here. When we achieved our independence, we didn't nationalize all the rubber estates. It still belonged to them. We didn't nationalize the mines. It still belonged to them. So they needed to have a base also over here to preserve their economic interests. Two, at the time was the height of the Cold War. We had got the expansion of communism. Communism from China. China became a communist country in 1950. We were afraid of the Chinese and of communism to spread to Southeast Asia. So Britain had their base over here. In our agreement, we also allow them to use the base for its strategic interests in the region. and therefore the interest of its allies. So Britain was a member of Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, C2. America is also a member. So you can see the relationship between UNDA and C2 and the interests of the Western powers in this region. So Britain also needed UNDA. So in foreign relations, there's no such thing as free lunch. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. At the same time, in diplomacy or in foreign policy, there's no permanent friend. What is permanent is your national interest. No permanent friend, no permanent enemies. What is permanent is your national interest all the time. That's also like in politics, isn't it? So you find team A, team B, then team A plus B, and then another one for team C, that's the rest. Okay. Next one. So, as I did mention to you, Tunku was a very practical person. So you might ask, who became our ambassadors when we achieved independence? Ambassadors don't drop from the sky, isn't it? You have to train these people to become diplomats. So, we didn't have professional diplomats or professional ambassadors. We had got professional diplomats, they were junior officers, the second secretary, the secretary, director. But the ambassadors were all, political appointees. They were friends of Fadul Rahman. And then also the Kedah Mafia. But Fadul Rahman is from Kedah. So they would take all his trusted friends from Kedah to become ambassadors. Of course, you can see all these things. First ambassador to London. When we established our embassies, we established 6 embassies. Not more than that. And it's very frugal, spending. Is that we are not as ostentatious as Indonesia or Soekarno, when I was overseas, even as ambassadors or junior officers. The officers, when they attend reception, they will always be chauffeur driven in a Mercedes Benz. When I was a junior officer, I would be driving a small car with my wife beside me to attend reception. That's how they live overseas. Quite showy, but we were not that showy. And we opened 6 embassies because we can't afford to have many embassies. It's very expensive. You have to pay for my embassy salon, you have to pay for my house, my children's education, you have to pay for my children's education. It's much more expensive than sending your kids to Harvard or Princeton, private schools. So 6, that is Bangkok, Canberra, UK, USA, India, and the UN. You might ask, why Jakarta? It's our biggest neighbor. And then we belong to the same race. It's racial sentiment, satu rumput. And then of course, it's big and strategically the most important country in Southeast Asia. I will talk to you later on. That's why when we established ASEAN, we made sure that Indonesia joins ASEAN. It's just like Indonesia doesn't join ASEAN, it's just like having the UN without the American. Or after the First World War, we had the League of Nations without the American, without the big boy. Not the big boy, but the big boy in the cloud, because it's going to fail. So Canberra, because of our relation with Britain, the defense arrangement. Australia used to place their soldiers over there. UK, of course, is a metropolis. Our umbilical cord was still with London. India, very big country, and it's one of the leaders in the Afro-Asian community. And we have Nehru and Tunku. They were friends when they were in Britain. Good friends, and they knew each other. So I went to Nehru's memorial. He used to write to my dear friend. Not to say my dear Prime Minister. Very personal. And of course the UN. And you will ask me why UN is important. Like any country in the world, the moment they achieve independence, they established an embassy called permanent residency to the UN. Because why? Because you want to be recognized by the world community that you are now an independent state. And of course, when you join the UN, it means you are a member of the club where there are certain rules and regulations. Other countries will recognize your existence, your territorial integrity, and your sovereignty. And when we had our office in the UN is called Permanent Representative of Malaysia to the UN. And then when our ambassador is called Pemrep to the UN. We don't call him ambassador. You know why permanent? You are on call 24 hours when you work at the UN. Because when it's dark over there, it's daylight over here. War might break out in Malaysia at 12 o'clock, noontime, there's 12 midnight over there. The UN have to meet. So we are supposed to be there permanently. Who headed the mission there? So we can see that London translating Ahmad Khan, lawyer, trained in Britain. He became our speaker much later in life. But very colorful person. His father, very elitist. His father was the military star of Kelantan before independence. And you find that the civil service was very elitist in nature. When I joined the foreign service when I was in Jakarta, I was the only non-Malay college product who became a diplomat. Number one and until third secretary, they were all college of they were all product of Malay college. So they were very proud of college. So one day I got angry and told them, had I gone to Malay college, I wouldn't have become a diplomat like you. Then one day I would have become the first Malay scientist. So no big deal. And Washington DC and UN to Dr. Ismail. Later on, he became our Prime Minister. Very stern person. I've got my student doing her masters. She can't find documents on Dr. Ismail. All his personal files are kept in Singapore. Simon gave it to Singapore, what you call that, ISIA, Institute of South Asian Studies. Because when he was, the son, I think, has produced a book. Biography of the father, the reluctant politician. Because he wrote some nasty things about the sultans in Japan. So he kept all the documents over there. So Dr. Ismail comes from a very illustrious family. His brother was also ambassador to Canberra. And they were very proud when fighting against the British on his Malay communication. Next slide. Jakarta, Tunku Abdul Rahman, Malay nationalist, took a ship, went to USA, and studied at California University and got his BA in political science. A self-made man. So later on he became minister. He came back, super lad, he became minister. Bangkok, Syed Sheikh Salahuddin, this Salahuddin family from Kedah. This is a brother-in-law of Tunku. Married to his sister by the name of Hafsan. So it's all in the family. Canberra is good later. Later on he became a country with lawyer. And in New Delhi, McIntyre. You think that he's a white man? No. He's Indian. Country McIntyre. So you can find that later on, even the second batch of politicians, they were all political economists, but very well qualified. They had people like Tunku, brother of Tunku Abdul Rahman, and Sulaiman Abdul Rahman, brother of Tunku Ismail, to Canberra. And later on, he went to the UN with Ramani, born in India, became a natural aspiration. He became our ambassador. He became a country later on. Very capable lawyer. Next one. Okay. We have all the professional diplomats. We have all the ambassadors post given to the politicians. Because see, we need what we call the incubation period to become an ambassador. You can't drop from the sky and suddenly become ambassador. All these young people, when they achieve independence in 1957, we recruit them directly into the foreign service. So they were all fresh graduates. One of them was Khairi Jamaluddin's father, Jamaluddin Abu Bakar, my super senior in Georgia. Some were co-opted from the home sector, like the former ruler of Negeri Sembilan, Tunku Jaafar. He was a diplomat. He was the DO of Rembau. He was co-opted to the foreign service. So he led home sector to join the foreign sector, so to speak. And he was one of the first professional diplomats to become ambassador in 1963. So it took him, he waited for about 6 years. He was DO of Burma. 6 years later he became the ambassador to Egypt. Some of fresh graduates have told you we trained them to become diplomats. Well, we trained them. We sent them to Canberra and London School of Economics and Political Science. They were in London. They went there for postgrad diploma, and there was one international relations professor over there, Michael Lieber, just passed away about 4 or 5 years ago. He trained all the young Malaysian diplomats. And we also sent them to Canberra. Australia used to train our diplomats too. They would train us, they send that they will attach us to their embassies. So we will learn the job, learn the trade on the job trade. In fact, Canberra has been very nice. After 13 years in the service, I applied for a foreign movement scholarship, and the Australian government gave me a scholarship to go into my master's degree in international relations at ANU. Malaysian students, Malaysian scholarship holders get 600 Australian dollars per month. I got 1,200 Australian dollars. For protocol procedures, we found that we have a sultan monarchy over here. So Tunku is half Thai. Mother was a Thai lady. Father was a sultan of Peru. So Tunku was very close to the Thai royal family. He said, well, we don't really have a tradition. Suddenly we have a Dagung. Previously we don't have Dagung. We have all the sultans and young sultans. Suddenly we have a king in Malaysia. Most probably the best place to train these people today on protocol. You go to Bangkok and learn from the Bangkok diplomats. So our protocol officers were sent there to learn about protocol. Protocol is not shaking hands at the airport and all those things. It means more than that. As for example, when you are appointed as ambassador, it's a special credential. Credentials are written in high class English, Shakespearean English. Ye, this and that, thou art. So we send to Bangkok again. So I'll talk to you about landmarks in Malaysia. I might miss something, but you may ask me for clarification later on. Success and failure doesn't mean that we're successful all the time. Sometimes we fail initially, but towards the end we became victorious. So one is we try to experiment with regionalism. Tunku came out with the idea of Association of Southeast Asia. We call it ASEAN in 1960. It's supposed to be, members are supposed to be Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia. Indonesia didn't like the idea. No, why is it? One, it's not written anywhere, it's big brotherism. I'm the big brother. This initiative should come from me, not from Malaysia. Malaysia just independence. On a silver platter, we fought for our independence, therefore we are greater than you. So that's the Indonesian mentality until to this day, big brotherism. We also behave that way. I think we behave to small countries, the Brunei and the rest, as a big brother. And Indonesia also, there's also some valid reason. I said that, why should we join this group? Yeah, got Thailand, member of SIPO, Lady of America. The Philippines, member of SIPO, Lady of America. Malaysia, you have UNGA. You are also representing capitalist interests. Indonesian foreign policy is active and independent. We do not want to be such a group. So that's why Indonesia didn't join in. But when Indonesia didn't join in, as I told you just now, just like I did, the League of Nations without America. But later on, we had to go short. When we formed Malaysia, Philippines didn't recognize us. So we had only Thailand and Malaysia. So Thailand and Malaysia, we don't call it a regional organization anymore. So whatever collaboration that Thailand is bilateral. But the relevance of the collaboration with Thailand until today is still there. Like the railway link from Malaysia to Bangkok. You can take a train from Kuala Lumpur and go to Bangkok without leaving the coach. And from Bangkok, you can take the train and go down as far as Batu and Kuala Lumpur. Then, yes, I find again, we succeeded in combating Indonesia's diplomatic propaganda against Malaysia. So Indonesia initially was very, very successful. They said that Malaysia was created by the West. Former colonial master was Britain, and Britain gave Sabah and Sarawak to for us to colonize on behalf of Britain. So currently we call it new colonialism and imperialism. So the Indonesians are very good at creating acronyms. Some acronyms are fantastic, like Ampera, Amanat Penderitaan Rakyat, years of living dangerously. So some Afro-Asian countries were taken by Indonesia's propaganda. For example, like countries like Algeria, Ghana, and Pakistan, they got Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. They were very unhappy with this. Ali Bhutto said that, you know why Malaysia is very pro-India during the Pakistan-India border skirmishes? Because the ambassador is an Indian, by the name of Ramani. And Ramani was not representing Malaysia. Ramani was in fact representing India. So they didn't break off relations. Pakistan broke off relation with us because of that. So we had some problem with the Afro-Asian countries. So we sent people go to the Afro-Asian country. We said, try to lobby them, explain to them it's not a new colony design, but the people of Sabah and Sarawak, we had a Kabul Commission. We told the Kabul Commission people that they would like to be part of Malaysia. And you don't believe us? We told them the UN also went there for a fact-finding mission. And the UN came out with the conclusions that 2/3 of the people of Sabah and Sarawak wanted to join Malaysia. So self-determination meaning that more than 50% means they wanted to be in Malaysia. So Egypt, Algeria, Ghana, Pakistan going forward. So this is a very embarrassing situation. So the non-aligned meeting in Peru, we sent our diplomats over there because some of the countries said that we are going to sponsor your membership. So we sent our diplomats, but when we arrived in Peru, they refused to accept us as a member because membership in NAM is by consensus. Countries like Egypt, Algeria, they were against us. So it was quite an embarrassment for us. We had our diplomats there. We would call them back, you know. So what happened is that Morocco was very nice to us. Morocco said that, well, they don't accept you all over there. You can send a diplomat to Morocco and you can establish an embassy. We recognize Malaysia. So that's why you see for many, many years, people kept on asking, why do you have an embassy in Morocco? That's not an important country. And we didn't even have embassies in Libya and all those places in the early days. Not even in Algeria, but we had in Morocco. So that the Moroccans helped us to save our lives in 1963. Offered us a place. So it's something that we are still paying back to the Moroccans for all the good for that good deeds. And then I want to Novel Ismail as our ambassador to the UN. In the UN, they are not supposed to bring in weapons. So the Indonesians were infiltrating in our territory. They were sending in so-called volunteers to infiltrate. They even dropped their paratroopers in Labis at the time I was in Hong Kong in 1964. So we had to prove it to the UN there was aggression from Indonesia. So what we did was to bring all those weapons smuggled into the UN building. How did we smuggle them? We have become experts also in counter propaganda. We make friends with all the security guards. So what we do, we dismantle all the weapons. So one guy carried a barrel, one guy carried it. Okay. So at the UN, when Dr. Ismail presented our case, quickly we assembled all those weapons. And then within 5 minutes, everybody took photographs. Then the UN security people came and took away the weapons. But the whole world was there to see that there was aggression from Indonesia. Yeah, he showed them the shirt, the uniform with TNI, Indonesia, the caps, and the weapons with the TNI top over there. So the United Nations Security Council adopted. We were successful in persuading the Security Council to come out with a resolution condemning the act of Indonesia. But again, at the UN, you had got the big powers, permanently representing themselves at the UN. It was a mere consensus condemning Indonesia, except these 2 countries, Czechoslovakia and USSR. Czechoslovakia, of course, that communist country, they were supporting Indonesia. Indonesia was very much under the influence of Russia and China. And worst thing was USSR used its veto power. So when they used the veto power, that resolution became null and void. But morally, we won the case because we were able to prove to the world there was aggression from Indonesia. Then of course Indonesia became Soekarno lost his stop. When in 1964 we became a member of the Security Council for the first time, and Indonesia was telling the whole world that Malaysia was a creation of the West, new colony. So it was a big blow to Indonesia. So Soekarno, in anger, left the UN. When he left the UN, Indonesia lost the diplomatic war. The UN members were always saying, well, Malaysia, I think, was right. They didn't leave the UN whatsoever, took it calmly. So Indonesia could not accept it to let the UN. So it was one of the high points in our diplomacy. So we were very good. In a very short time, I had got Zanan Sulu, who was my bachelor when I was in Jakarta. He was in the Malaysian desk and he told me, oh, we also learned all the dirty tricks. The Indonesian is also the dirty trick of dirty propaganda. We also use dirty propaganda, counter propaganda. So propaganda, so many things that you can do. Black propaganda, white propaganda. You can plant certain information and you can also, you yourself, give the information. To make it credible, sometimes you plant it. And formation of ASEAN, because after that, in Indonesia, there was a change of government. Suharto became the president, and Soekarno led the scene. The Communist Party of Indonesia was banned, and Indonesia became, less communist during the days in their posture. And they recognized Malaysia. No more of they calling Ganyang Malaysia. So we formed ASEAN in 1967. So why did we form ASEAN? We had ASAM, isn't it? Why didn't we revive ASAM? So we were quite sensitive. We know the sensitivities of Indonesia. If we were to revive ASAM, then Indonesia would be a Johnny come lately member. But it's not Johnny come lately. You don't want to be Johnny come lately member. And we want Indonesia to be in that group in ASEAN because it's the biggest country in Southeast Asia, and with Indonesia we can get better recognition, stronger recognition from the countries outside the region. And main architect of this organization was Malaysia and Indonesia. This is not a joke. If you read Ghazali Shafi's memoir, the ending of confrontation, the agreement was in Bangkok. We didn't have the meeting in Malaysia because if the meeting was to be held in Malaysia, we think the Indonesia would come. No, it's such a small country. Then normally, when there's a hostility between two countries, we would have to talk in a neutral country. So Thailand was a country that was very neutral when there was confrontation. Philippines was on the Indonesian side. And this again diplomacy. When we negotiated with Indonesia, we didn't have it in the hotel or the convention center. We had it at the residence of Kanan Command, the foreign minister of Thailand. He spoke to the Indonesian first. This is what we call this. We call it not face to face. There is a terminology for it later on. That's out of my mind. So proximity talk we call it. So Kanan Command go to the Indonesian gauge the situation and talk to the Malaysian, another rule, this and that. Then of course he get an idea. Then of course they get an idea how to bring these two countries together. They talk to say, if I were to arrange the agenda like this, you agree with it? So Malaysia said okay. Indonesia said okay. Then only he became the mediator. Then later on, you see, after the signing of the peace agreement, there were a lot of talks between Ghazali Shafi, Razak, and Adam Malik, the foreign minister of Indonesia. He was not a military politician, so he was not involved in confrontation. It's very physical stuff. So people say that they talk about the formation of ASEAN while having massage at a massage parlor. But that's not true. But they were at a coffee shop or the restaurant or breakfast. They say that no, we shouldn't have another confrontation. It's not good for the region. And then we had got the Vietnamese War. And then if there's another confrontation, there will be another war over there. Then we would be, when these foreign powers come in, then if elephants make love, we all will be trampled, isn't it? So they said that, yeah, why not? We form an organization. We never thought of dividing ASEAN. So we form ASEAN, Association of South Asian Nations. And why we survive continuously? Why communist countries like Russia, like Vietnam, Cambodia, join us, Laos join us. They are communist countries, socialist countries. Because when we form ASEAN, it's not, we make sure that it's not military in nature, not ideological in nature, and it's not antagonistic in nature. We formed the organization not to antagonize anyone, but Sito was the antagonized China. And in the declaration in Bangkok, we specify that it's open, membership is open to all Southeast Asian countries. And if you ask, what do you mean by Southeast Asia? We followed the definition of Lord Louis Mountbatten. Southeast Asia Command, Mr. Guru, he said, this is Southeast Asia. And if you ask us, diplomats, MHHC diplomats, what do you mean by Southeast Asia? Look at the definition given by Lord Louis Mountbatten. So the only country that has not become a member of ASEAN is Timor-Leste. Small country, they can take their own time, own sweet time to join. Okay. Next one. Change of government in Indonesia is a reason of the end of confrontation, the formation of ASEAN. Good chemistry between the Malaysian leaders and the Indonesian leaders. But it doesn't mean that now they have got good chemistry with them. It's that. And then they got Malaysian Diplomacy. They got them involved all the time. There's no such thing as Johnny come military member. And then you can see that after confrontation, we always refer to them, we keep them informed. What consult. When we have consultation, doesn't mean that we consult them. Whatever decision we make, we inform them. So to a certain extent, self-inflicted big, small brotherism on our part in this Razak. We always consult them, keep them informed. That's why when we recognize China, Indonesia do not like China because of the involvement of China in the Gestapo, this 1965 coup d'etat. The Chinese embassy was involved according to them. So of course, Indonesia was the second last country to recognize China. Singapore was the last. For technical reasons, Lee Kuan Yew say that we would be the last because if we were the first to recognize China or second, then the whole world, especially South Asian countries, the majority countries said, well, Singapore is the whole of mainland China over here. The Cuba of Southeast Asia. It's technical on the part of Lee Kuan Yew. So whatever we do, we kept them informed. And later on, we will find that during Mahathir's time, Mahathir came out with all sorts of ideas. We didn't keep the Indonesian informed, and we found that most of our plans were not welcomed by the Indonesian. Only big brotherism. Because Razak became the Prime Minister, there's a change in our foreign policy. Well, pro-West and anti-communist, we became non-aligned. Non-aligned means we don't belong to any bloc. We are in the middle. But it doesn't mean that we're pro-communist. Razak foreign policy is non-aligned, anti-communist at home. We're still anti-communist at home, but we were quite friendly with the communists outside the country. That means we can recognize the non-communist countries. During the days of Tunku, we didn't recognize any of the communist countries except Russia. There's a reason that Russia is quite far away. And the communists from there are all white communists. If you were to recognize China, the Chinese communists, they look like any one of us, isn't it? Water and fish, very low. Then again, see why we share our foreign policy. Lesson on confrontation. We found that we were putting our egg in one basket. We concentrated on the Western countries. We were neglecting the Afro-Asian countries. We didn't have any friends. So we had to spend a lot of money on diplomacy to get friends in the Afro-Asian countries. And then again, Britain, Russia and America, they were beginning to talk to each other. Lessening of the temperature. But if they have been talking to each other, then it would be very stupid to very, very strongly against the communists, isn't it? They're having more Arabs than the Arabs. And then again, a rapprochement between USA and China. That was a time that Henry Kissinger was doing a lot of negotiation with China. They were on the verge of recognizing China. And we didn't recognize China. He said that we should also follow suit. We must engage China. With a big power like America is engaging China, why don't we? And then again, China also has become an important country, accepted as a UN member. Prior to that, China was not a member of the UN. You know, the seat of China was occupied by Taiwan, a small country, of course, slightly of the West. They were put there by the West. By 1970, China became a member of the UN, and then we asked, we can ask, we might ask, so what's so big about it? But China also was given the P5, permanent 5 post. Permanent 5 in the Security Council. China also has got the veto power. It has become a powerful group. And then again, shift in British defense policy. They pulled out their armed forces from Malaysia. UNDA was replaced. Agreement was replaced with a 5-power defense arrangement. Arrangement in legal terms is totally different from an agreement. So in the arrangement, very loose little words. The agreement is that if any one party is attacked by an external power, the other party will automatically assist them. I mean, we've been attacked by China. Britain would have sent their helpers. During the days of confrontation, they really fought the war for us in Sabah as well. But in the arrangement, it said that the parties involved would meet and consult each other and decide on the next line of action. So in diplomacy, no action is also action. So we agree that this arrangement might be, the action might be no action. So we have to shift our policy. Because you see, as I told you earlier on, doesn't mean that we can defend our country only with military power. We can use diplomacy. Rather than isolating our enemy, we talk to the enemy. So like China, during this October drama, we were isolating China. We didn't want to talk to China. So to Razak said, yes, we are very suspicious of the Chinese, but we can overcome that by talking to them. So in a way, we have been successful in that. Then of course, anti-communist at home, but abroad, doctrine of peaceful coexistence. We agree to coexist. You with your social system, we with our social system, but it doesn't mean that they don't talk to each other. Because in Islam also, lakum dinukum waliyadin. Surah Al-Ikhlas. Okay, next one. Because the high point of Tunku's foreign policy was normalizing relations with China in that instant. So we were the first country to recognize China in Southeast Asia. And I did mention just now that the neighboring countries, well, they were not too happy, but we kept them informed of every stage of our negotiation with the Chinese. And of course, if you were to ask me, we recognize China for security reasons as well as for economic reasons. For my students, that China is a rich country. China was a rich then, in 1974. But they were one of the biggest consumers of our palm oil and rubber. It's a big market. China only wear one pair of shoes per year, but they got 1 billion. You can say 1 billion pair of shoes. But the most important thing was we want to kill the influence of the Communist Party. So when we spoke to the Chinese, we told them, look here, you have been supporting the Communist Party by giving them arms, this and that, and moral support. So you have to be linked if you want to be frank with this. So the Chinese party, the Chinese government said that, yes, the Communist Party of Malaysia is your domestic problem. You do whatever you want with it. It has nothing to do with this anymore. So you are chimpanzee, of course, morally, you know. That's why they went to Betul in the end, they signed the peace agreement with us because of that. But China still has got contact with the Communist Party. So that is our relation with it is Communist Party of China with Communist Party of Malaysia. It's not relation between the government of China and the Communist Party. So it's different. Say UMNO's relation with the separatist movement is different. We don't say that Barisan National Government with the separatist movement is two different levels. So again, China recognized dual citizenship during this case. What happened to the Chinese in Malaysia? They cannot Malaysian citizenship. So they told the Chinese, you must make a stand. So of course they said that those that take Malaysian citizenship, they are Malaysian citizens. They are not Chinese citizens. Whatever you want to do, you do with them, deal with them, because they are your citizens. So that also gives us a lot of security. Otherwise, you know, if all the Chinese in Malaysia, the government of China says that they are our citizens, then they have reason to interfere in our domestic affairs. And then there are the old Chinese over here, they don't want to become Malaysians. Yes, so-called status, but they are Chinese citizens. So we are the Chinese. What would happen to these people? And that's no problem with that. You can come out with statements saying that the stateless Chinese, if they want to return, they may return to China. But if they want to stay in Malaysia, they may do so, but they must obey Malaysian laws. And then if they don't obey Malaysian laws, Malaysian government is take to deal with them within the legal framework. So that was the agreement, not agreement, but the understanding with China. So we had a joint communique with China. And the joint communique, normally joint communique is not signed, but the joint communique with China was signed by Razak and Chow and Lai. Because we want to have something written commitment from the Chinese about the CPN, status of the Chinese, etc. So it was a written joint communique. The first and the last one. Until to this day, we don't sign that. The joint communique is released in this paper, is not signed. Now why? Initially, we wanted to have an agreement with the Chinese. Of course, the Chinese told us, recognize us, then we have an agreement with you. And we said, no, that's not good enough for us. We might lose election. So we told them, if we don't have an agreement, most probably there's no go. So we had the negotiation in New York. But I think the Chinese change is there. They know that Malaysia do not make the first move. All the other Southeast Asian countries wouldn't recognize. So they told us, well, what say you? We don't sign an agreement. We come out with a joint communique. We sign the joint communique. So to us, it served our purpose. Of course, the Chinese can say, forget about the joint communique. Then we can show the whole world. Look, China has revenge on its word. It's bad for China's image that China was slowly, going to take an active part of the UN, and they want to have a good name. And of course, there were a lot of lingering irritants. They got the voice of Malaysian Revolution. Samsia Fakin from Negeri Sembilan from Kuala Bilang. He was one of the announcers, etc. So some lingering irritants. So they were operating from China, later on they were operating from Peru. But we knew that they were supported by China. And at the same time, our relation with China, now is of course Japan. But during those days it was government to government, not people to people. So Malaysian Chinese were not supposed to visit China. But the Chinese also, they were playing some tricks. They allowed Malaysian Chinese to enter China through Hong Kong without endorsing the passport. So, but to make the story more juicy, there was a plane crash in China. And we found that there were 13 or 14 Malaysians. And how on earth these Malaysians went to China? Then we discovered that the Chinese were playing a double game. So we told them, stop this game. So those were the irritants that existed, even though after we recognized China. Of course, now we don't have all these problems. So then, of course, we come to the end of it. Mahathir. Many people brand his foreign policy as like differently, adventurous, radical, international techniques. Without all the analysis, the adjectives used. But anyway, so we see that Mahathir, I didn't touch on Hussein because Hussein was a prime minister for a very short time, but he merely implemented what the foreign policy of Razak. He didn't make any change himself, but Mahathir did change it because Mahathir finally was different from the rest. For the first time, we found that prime minister being critical of the rest. They were very friendly with because later they have to defense of Malaysia, fight against Soekarno, was very critical of the West, and he didn't make use of it. I did mention that the public channel, he was more in favor of having what is microphone diplomacy. He's not happy, he will take the microphone and say that the Americans double standard, shifting the goalposts all the time, double standard, different standard for itself, different standard for its allies, different standard for countries that do not produce oil, different standard they use for Saudi Arabia. You never see that the West countries criticizing Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia have no government, no election. They decided they were allowed to drive cars over there, but they didn't protect us. But other third world countries, you don't have, wow, therefore they start to protect us. And of course, he said that buy British lunch. Isn't it? Buy British lunch. Don't buy anything made in Britain. Buy lunch. If we had no other alternative, then only buy from Britain. Otherwise, we will buy from Britain. And look, its policy that we have got development. We should also follow the development models of the Eastern countries like Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. Yes, I served in Korea. I was responsible for implementing this policy. I think there's a lot that we need to learn from Korea when I was there. In fact, I learned to be more disciplined after being in Korea. After Korea, start of night, how far is the space from our embassy? Very near, sir. Yeah, how near is it? 2 kilometers. How did you go to the place? I walked, sir. So nowadays, after that, I like to walk. And then when you take chewing gum, tissue paper, this and that, put it in my pocket, walk to the nearest dustbin and throw them to the nearest dustbin. Koreans don't throw rubbish anywhere, they're very disciplined. And you wear a muffler, and this and that, you drop your muffler in winter, they won't take the muffler, they'll take it home. And they'll take the muffler and they find the nearest lamp post and tie it there. You trace back your step, you will find the stickler for time, this and that. And then the work ethics. They don't call the office boy to work. If they can do it, they will do it. So, for this an anecdote, when I was in Korea, one of the ministers was at the airport. I waited for him, and they asked me, Mr. Mokhtar, what is the secret behind the rapid progress in Korea? So before I could explain to him, the manager of the airport, Tunku airport, came and said, welcome Korea, sir. I hope you have a nice day over here. Would you like to have incentive, this and that? And then I was offered incentive, I said, thank you. I got something else. The embassy staff said, thank you, all the best. And then as he walked away, and he saw there was the carpet, it was a little bit crumpled. And then he stood down and pulled the carpet. And the minister told me, now I know why. In our country, we call the gardener or the office boy. The carpet is crumpled, you can do it yourself. And you want to do a photocopy, you call the office boy. The photocopy machine is just right in front of you. Okay. Issues that were championed by Mahathir. But on hindsight, those issues are of no direct interest to us. We talk about Antarctica. We would have the scientists to do research over there. What the hell Antarctica is so important. So we were jumping from one issue to another. Zionism versus Arab, human rights, Bosnia and Afghanistan. What did we get from Afghanistan? The Mujahideen influence. Bosnia, they were giving them weapons, this and that. You know, when the Bosnians were developing their country, development project, we asked them for development project, but we can't find it in this book. You know what the Bosnian government told us? We are European first, European last. They didn't give the same thing. So we were jumping from one issue to another. We were more interested in Africa, Zimbabwe, Mali, when the Europeans had given up all those countries. So we were jumping from one issue to another, and then we became very unpopular. The Western countries were critical of this. But look at it. Which is more important for interests, economic survival? Mali, Mozambique, or America? America is important for us because 40% of our market is America. Isn't it? And we are a developing country, but we are very near to becoming a developed country. Our future is with the Western countries, industrialist countries, not with Bangladesh, Mali, Zambia, this and that. So it was jumping from one place to another, and we were sometimes behaving more Arabs than the Arabs. So I would really like for us fighting the Palestinian cause. Because I think that is the problem. The Arabs doesn't solve the problem. I served in Kuwait. The Arabs, they don't like the Palestinians. They don't like them. And we took the Bosnians in. I hope there are no Bosnians. But I'm very frank about it. I'm very sorry. During the Bosnian War, we brought them here, as refugees. We put them in the hotels in Langkawi. They refuse to serve us all because they think they are white. They only serve Western tourists. Always about you are. Well, you are Asian, colored people. We used to colonize. The Europeans used to colonize the whole. So we had this type of people when they came here. Okay. Of course, it was sometimes was played to the gallery. Third world countries, Mahathir is our spokesperson, this and that. We did not really have to fight for that because we don't have any problem of penetrating the Western market. There's no problem at all. And for the biggest multinational companies over here, all the Western. Motorola, for that Panasonic belongs to Japan. And Mahathir didn't consult any of the neighbors. He come out with some ideas like the EAEG, East Asian Economic Group, to counteract, to negate APEC, which is the brainchild of the Americans. So he came out with this. Of course, he didn't consult the neighboring countries, the big players, the big boys. Whose economy depends on export, like Indonesia and Singapore. So they were taken aback. So they didn't really support the idea of EEE. It was a very good idea because now we are from the success of East Asia summit process. But of course, Mahathir, when we formed the EAED, he specified that Australia and New Zealand shouldn't be. Why Australia and New Zealand? They are the spokesperson of American interests. They would be the mole in the organization. When Parlak became the Prime Minister, said, okay, we continue with this idea, but we can take in the Australian and the New Zealanders. But then, we can counterbalance it by taking in another country. They can say no to the West. It could be India. So India acts as a counterbalance. India is a country that can also say no to the Western countries. So Mahathir, a very big special personality. Why our relation with our neighbors was not so good? You must have read Mahathir's biography, Doctor in the House. My relation with Lee Kuan Yew has never been a friendship. And these two guys, when Singapore was part of Malaysia, they used to fight each other in parliament. Lee Kuan Yew used to call Mahathir a Malay Ultraman. So don't expect that when Lee Kuan Yew became the Prime Minister for 25 years or so, Mahathir 22 years, suddenly they would love each other and fight each other. So the animosity, the sentiment of the thought of the old days when they were acknowledging each other. And again, with Suharto. The relationship with Suharto was not too good. Because when Suharto, when Indonesia hosted APEC summit in Bogor, we attended that meeting. But the first one we didn't attend. It was held in Seattle. So Mahathir said, no, this is the design of the West. America would say it is for consultation. Later on, America would turn it into a rule-based organization. Mahathir's projection was true. But then the Western diplomats are also quite smart. They know that if it was to be held in Indonesia, we wouldn't say no. You go and attend. So we attended the second summit in Indonesia, but in Indonesia we spoke vociferously. We were very critical of APEC. So much so Suharto as a whole felt very uncomfortable. So we had the joint statement we had an addendum with reservation made by Malaysia. For this you can't find in books. Suharto was very upset. So when Mahathir went back to his room, Suharto was walking towards the lift. He didn't even look at Mahathir. He looked the other way around. Of course, you can't find this on books. When we were on duty over there, you know what happened. Okay. And of course, post Mahathir, we have post Mahathir got Pala and so this was the stand taken by Pala. When he met as diplomat, said that a good foreign policy will make other countries comfortable in dealing with Malaysia. So prior to that, some of the countries were not so comfortable in dealing with us. It must be an enlightened policy which takes care of the people of Malaysia above all and make Malaysia an acceptable and reliable partner in interstate affairs. So you can see the shift again. So here is takes care of the people because we were not putting our money where our mouth is, isn't it? We were more interested in Bosnia. It's a European problem. What is happening in Africa is an African problem. To understand Pala really prioritized Malaysia's foreign policy, saying that our neighbors are important. If Cambodia goes down under, we will go down under. But if Mozambique were to go down under, they would stay and enjoy ourselves over here. So we prioritize it, and then again, we make it, if we are unhappy with the policy of the big powers, we will use diplomatic channel. No more of the microphone diplomacy. And you will find that when he became the Prime Minister, immediately he called on Bush, Najib, also everybody with Obama, because they don't recognize each other. So this was a message given by Pala. We had a long discussion for 3 days and 3 nights among us diplomats and we used also very, sometimes it's not so palatable. So some of us say that we have to provoke, in some sort of brief conversation. There was an occasion, one of the, one of us said, well, our future is with the Western countries. If they don't buy our products, we would go down. If you want to have a growth rate of 7 to 12%, these are the countries that can buy our products. Bangladesh can't even afford to buy a pair of shoes from us. So we used to, if we have kiss us, let us kiss us. So they were trying to provoke each other so that we come out with new ideas how to conduct our foreign policy. So there was a big change. Even Najib would say that you diplomats, I have to depend on you. That's why he told us, you are good at tossing hot potato until it becomes cold. So we leave it to you all the kind of things. So Mahathir, he was the foreign policy of Mahathir, he decided to consult this. But now again, I found that they didn't consult this because they had a lot of domestic problems. So foreign policy is also important to these kinds of things. So Mahathir foreign policy, like in Balkans, jumping from one issue to another, from one region to another, and then did it benefit Malaysia? I don't think so. We were becoming like Santa Claus. I used to accompany Mahathir for big conferences. Big ones that I was in Rio de Janeiro for 1 month. I became the chief of staff of the Malaysian delegation for the Earth Summit, the first Earth Summit. And whenever it's a mission from the third world country, it's a government from the third world countries call, and I will be there taking down rooms. Oh, you will find that they thought that we are Mr. Santa Claus. I want to have peace. We want assistance from you. One president came and said, well, we want to promote our country. We want to have a cultural delegation, the cultural troop, visiting all the European countries, the encourage them to visit Malaysia. We don't have money. Can you give us money? So we became more than a Santa Claus. So now we find that less rhetoric, more on persuasive diplomacy, more consultation, more emphasis on the region that mentioned just now. Okay, let's talk about the future. These are all the big issues. For professional diplomat versus political appointments. Of course, I think our government now, Malaysian National is not as strong as before. UMNO is not as strong as before. So you have to be good to everyone. To Abdul Rahman, yes, he appointed politicians. So political appointees doesn't mean politicians. Non-professional diplomats, we call them political appointees. To Abdul Rahman appointed capable people. But I don't know whether we are sending capable people as ambassadors. Those who have lost their license, jump ship from one party to another. And professionalism, quality of Malaysian diplomat, whether we speak for this good quality civil servants. I'm teaching the university at Malaysia for 5 years. Graduated from Malaysia, went to Australia to do my masters. If you were to ask me, the academic quality of Malaysia, it has gone down at least by 50%. Inflation of age. During those days, you get a B, you can dance throughout the night. But nowadays, everybody is. And I used to give D's, no E's. I got scolded. Must give A's. I said no. And then again, whether clever Malaysians would like to become government servants. My children, none of them like to become, none of them try to become service. And my second boy used to tell them about, you must be very stupid. Selling your brain to the lowest bidder. You should be selling your brain to the highest bidder. Highest bidder means private sector. And in foreign policy decision making, you'll find that Ghazali Shafi'i, even before he became politician, he was a professional diplomat. They were very deeply involved in it. So, but nowadays, the ministers, they are more interested to make sure that they win the divisional contest. Also, not much attention is being given to the integrity of foreign policy. External issues, diplomatic qualities, US-China rivalry. US is coming back to this region after they ran away, from Vietnam. So be very careful. So the Americans, they are very good at coming in, meddle the whole thing, mess up the whole thing, and then when they can't solve the problem, they go back to like what they did in Vietnam and what they did also in Iraq. And in Vietnam, the boat people, when I was a junior officer, a lot of boat people in Malaysia to embassy. And when I became ambassador, nearly 30 years ago, then already we solved the problem. So when the values came here, they were bachelors, got married. When they left Malaysia, they left with a wife, daughter-in-law plus grandson. Three generations. Globalization, I think we have to accept the fact that it's a globalized world. We can't stick our cocoon, and we must prepare ourselves for globalization. So look at what happened in the Middle East. It's beyond imagination. It's because globalization that the whole of Gaddafi, this and that, it was so fast. Nowadays, even when I came, I didn't tell my son, my wife told my son, we are going to Malacca. About the video talk over there. Yeah. My friend told me he read in the internet. Then again, the situation, whether we are managing our relation with our neighbors well, with Singapore, with Thailand, with the Philippines, and with Indonesia. Are we managing it well? But we should forget the old sentiment. Big brother, certain code, this and that. That wouldn't work anymore. But we shouldn't go backward and forward. I think sometimes we go backward and we go forward. We have to be very frank with Indonesia. We have to tell them that we are different. We are a separate entity, this and that. Your culture, my culture is the same. No such thing as solving other people's culture. China is very happy when you have the Dalian dance over here, because what? That means culturally they have conquered. But in Indonesia, you say that you have that culture is something that doesn't belong to anyone. Culture is something that you borrow from here and there. Malay culture is very much also based on Hindu culture. The language that we speak tonight, the British are very happy because English has become an international language. But Indonesia is very unhappy all the time. It's because of the big brother attitude. But we are also at fault. We sometimes think, you are the big brother. Okay. Just before we leave,
Go back to the
this is again, okay. I don't know whether you know this man or not. He's the governor of Malacca. Tunku. He was my immediate boss. It's me. I was a bachelor then, not married yet. Tunku was my immediate boss. He was the councillor, our second secretary. He's a product of Malay College. Of course, a young man, a bachelor in Indonesia. Of course, I was a rookie, very junior officer, so I didn't understand. I wasn't first in the row, first day of the row. So he was the first Agung. I mean, he was then Agung, now he's Agung again. He visited India first, long and so at that time I was still second secretary in India. I was in India because sometimes I had to represent the embassy, and over here I was giving a briefing to some of the Nepali and the Indian civil servants. And again over here, change over time. Most probably better, I don't know. So I was in Korea, into secretary. So we were Simon Mahmood over there. We were talking to people from Sangyong, Hyundai, Daewoo then. Of course, this was when I was in Venezuela. For the first time, I headed a mission. I wasn't ambassador yet, but that was in 2000, 1990. So from 1990 onward, when I was posted overseas, I always headed the mission. I became the boss. So suddenly I have a driver, butler, things like that. So I received my credentials. First time as ambassador from Tunku, the Agung then. And I did mention earlier on, he was one of the first few professional ambassadors. In 1963, he became ambassador to UAE, or at that time UAE, now is Egypt. He was sent to Nigeria. Before he could go to Nigeria, his brother passed away. So the UNDA elected him as the younger Putra Besar. So he chose another profession to become the younger Putra Besar. So he gave up his post as ambassador. And of course, this not so young anymore. I was deputy secretary of ASEAN. I used to chair meetings, this and that. Of course, little bit silo. So I got all my staff and took a photograph of mine and said, "It's the best post that I could get for you." I was ambassador to Turkey. So these the credentials. So when you become ambassador, you receive the credential from the Agung. So you are conferred with the title of ambassador. So actually, we can use that title forever, for life. So many people ask me, why don't you use the title? Oh, even the title of Datuk too, I started using. When I go back to the kampung, I will meet my friends who are rubber tappers and look at my name. Ambassador Datuk Mokhtar, what the hell are these two good? So when I meet my friend, just for me Mokhtar. So actually you can use that title. So there are a few friends of mine who use that title. I think they are quite of course, when I was posted to Peru, I was at hostage for 11 days. First Malaysian ambassador to have hostage in the history of our diplomacy. But my wife here, my daughter. So I was punished by all the newspapers. I became a hero for some time. Okay. And I wrote a book published by Peru Publishing, Peru Tupac Amaru. Okay. Thank you very much. The Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmad. Yeah, so now before we go on, can I invite Mr. Colin Cole? Sorry, yeah, sorry. I thought, he's answered all our questions, right? Yes, but you heard and you saw the newspaper article that he was held hostage. Maybe you want to ask him something about that, how it was or something, or maybe you have other questions, maybe there are future diplomats in the room.
Yeah, too young to become diplomat.
Right, so any questions?
Just taking from Joe, could you share with us some of your experience being taken hostage?
Thank you. It's not a nice thing, but then again, people ask me, how did they treat you? Oh, they would. They threatened to kill us, to take us to the jungle, this and that. Well, all the ambassadors, our retirement age then is about 56. But Latin American countries, the retirement age is 75. Most of the ambassadors, they were taken hostage. I think they are as old as my late father. So they were not that friendly with the guerrillas. The guerrillas are all young chicos. They say, oh, these guys are as old as my grandson. I was the only one who was very friendly with them. So they liked it. So they never threatened me. So every morning, the terrorists would treat me, would greet me, good morning, Senor Ambassador. Buenos dias, Senor Ambassador. I was telling myself, oh, the terrorists are greeting me good morning when they have taken me hostage. But then people ask me, how come that? I felt most probably because at that time I was in my early 50s, and all the time I used to tell my students, I'm much younger than you in spirit. I'm as revolutionary as before. Then they talk about revolution, this and that. And I like Che Guevara. I like Castro. I was talking to them. Then there's some sort of this good chemistry between me and then we have got the two ladies. And the two ladies became very friendly. So some of the ambassadors told me, hey, don't be too friendly with the ladies, They might take you back to the jungle. When they fall in love with you, then it's bad to follow. But it's not because I think, but to me that be friendly with them. Then they would stop harassing you. One. Two, when you are held hostage, your best friend becomes your worst enemy sometimes. You'll be fighting for a piece of bread, for a stick of cigarette, this and that. So when you are held hostage, you must collaborate with each other. You must manage yourself well. So what we did is in our room, we have a monitor. When the food comes, he will collect the food. So we had got only, say, 10 slices of bread, there are 20 of us, each slice will be divided into 2. No such thing as family for that. And then the monitor said, now you can send letters to your family, because the Red Cross always said 1 letter per hostage. So of course, being monitor would say that 1 letter. So that you would collect the letter and give it to the Red Cross rep. That was the toilet. He had to use the toilet. If you were to use the toilet, you were to close the door, latch it. Then you want to pee, so you latch it. You want to do pee, so you latch it. And most probably in the morning you have to wait for about 2 hours before you use the toilet. So we have got some sort of written understanding. Write it on the wall. If you want to do big, you cannot close the door. You want to do small, you cannot close the door. That means 2 persons can do the job together. So otherwise you quarrel, you'll be kicking and all the things. And then you have to keep the whole thing clean. So first we had no water supply, we had to carry the water from the ground floor to the first floor. So I used to carry the water. And these people, they are okay, most of these Latinos, the diplomats, they elite, they are the Caucasian stock. I said, no, you shouldn't do all this job. They are very small in size. They don't do this job. We'll carry the water for you. Then after that, what shall I do? I think you become monitor of toilet. So I was looking after the toilet. So after they go to the toilet, I must make sure everything is clean. So I will clean the toilet. So we know, sometimes the toilet bowl is running out. So what we did, we took a chair and made a chair as a toilet. So we took off the seat and put plastic bag over there. So he do the job over there. 3 people can do the job in one time. 1 we use the bowl, 2 we use the chair. And there are a lot of things that you have to learn again. That how to communicate with the outside world. But sometimes you forget that you are hosting. You forget that those people from outside, they would go through all the rubbish academically that you are sending messages to. So they told us that you already send messages. And they were very disappointed with the police and the military personnel. They were trained, all the things they forgot about. But there was one guy, in the end he became the vice president of Peru. People say that this guy has gone crazy. He went around, he speak to the toilet bowl, hi toilet bowl, how are you today? Because he was thinking that people from outside must have been sending some bugging device. So he was speaking to all sorts of things. I think he was trying to hoodwink terrorists. Then he went to, because they all Christian, the people sent the statue of Jesus Christ want to pray. So they sent 2 or 3 statues. But nobody knew that there was a bugging device. So he was talking to the statue. Hello, Lord Jesus, if you hear me tomorrow, please play this song, Ukaracha. There was a special program for the message. Then early the next morning, this song Ukaracha was played. I said, now, I know that. Well, he didn't tell anyone. So every day, that this young kid has gone crazy. He's talking to Jesus every morning, every evening. And he continued talking to the toilet bowl, how are you? But we knew this after the whole incident. In fact, when I was released on the 11th day, we went to see Fujimori. And then Fujimori was asking me for clues. I said, how did these people treat you? I told him, sir, they were very free, especially the young terrorists. They were holding the gun all the time, and the fingers were on the trigger all the time. So they scared. The moment you send them the guitars, oh, they were very happy. They forgot about the weapon and they were playing guitar every day. Oh, we can't play the guitar because they monopolize the usage of the guitar all the time. That Fujimori told me, don't worry, I'll send more guitars. So they sent more guitars and to all the guitars. And then again, the number 2 of the group, that very evening when they stormed the building, he was shot in the leg. So he asked for crutches. And they were complaining, how come these people can't get me crutches? You can go to the pharmacy and buy one there for me. Oh, but because they were spending some time putting all the bugging device. So So because he was on the crutches, he would go and consult the commandante for it, and put the crutches aside. And the secret service of the Peru government were just dropped it. So in fact, when they wanted to release me, Fujimori knew about it because they overheard from the foreign devices. Tomorrow we can release the Malaysian ambassador. You know why? Because the foreign minister at the time, Ahmad Badawi, came to Peru. So that foreign minister of Malaysia came to Peru. No other foreign minister came to Peru. That is, we have got what we want. So that is global publicity. We can release the ambassador. So Pak went to see Fujimori, saying that I would like to be visiting. Fujimori told him, no, don't leave tomorrow. Of course, Fujimori cannot tell him, I know that. So Pak left that evening. So the following day, when I was released, he was in Mexico City. Made a round turn, came back to fetch me and took me home. And then when we went to see Fujimori said, I told you not to go home. You didn't want to listen to me. But he didn't tell Pak about the volume device. Before I left, I went to see him. So he told me, I knew that he would be released because of the volume device. So, but again, from the personal experience, if you ask me whether it affected you psychologically or not, yes. The first few months, first 6 months, every 2 or 3 weeks, I would train hostage, this and that. But one of my friends, because he was so traumatized, a British diplomat, he became crazy because of that. Because he couldn't believe that he was released by the terrorists. Because he's so brilliant. He used to tell me, Mokhtar, he will release you. You're from Malaysia. I'm from Britain. Not to tell this is America, Britain, this and that. I'm sure that he will be killed. So he thought that he would be killed all the time. So when he was released, after 6 months, he went crazy. When he used to ask me, I still dream about it. Some people also, because they dream, they have nightmares, they can't go to sleep, switch on the light, switch on the TV, they want to get angry. After 3 months, they went separate ways. So during those days, if I can't sleep, I go to the next room, and I like to do my own ironing. Even my wife's blouse, expensive blouses, I will do the ironing, but I don't have any sister in my family. So I will do the ironing, and I like my shoes to shine all the time. So people might laugh, how many pairs of shoes I have. I had for 20 or 30 pairs that I had when I was home. So polish the shoes, this and that, until I get tired and I go to sleep. I didn't disturb her. So these are the things that sometimes sounds very easy, but when it happens to you, you forget this and that. You don't know how to control yourself, how to manage yourself. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. I have, since we talked about Tupac Amaru, at that point of time I was still young. But I had a friend,
Yes.
he was serving in Santiago.
Yes.
And he went to Lima when
Yes.
he was in captivity.
Yes.
And I had the opportunity to also speak with Pak
Yeah.
after he came back
Yes.
with you.
Yes.
Kuala Lumpur.
Yes.
We had a long chat with Pak
Yes. Yes.
to share my personal.
Yes. Exactly. He was the first batch of student at IDFR. He was my student when I was director of training at IDFR. And we used to learn Spanish together at IDFR. But then he went to Santiago. I think he did his degree program in Spanish. I think he went to University of Santiago.
We were classmates.
Is it? He's from Penang. Yeah. So he became the interpreter. His Spanish is fantastically good. So because it's something secret, you can't employ a local interpreter for the foreign minister to speak with the Red Cross to Fujimori. They would divulge the secret. So we had to bring our own man. So now I can divulge the secret. Our commando also went there. There were 6 or 7 of them. That was not published in the newspaper. And they also sent our chief secretaries of Malaysia. They thought that my wife would crazy. And the chief secretary was my classmate in Kuala Lumpur, very close friend of mine. So the government said that this guy, very close to Mokhtar, knows the wife, he come from Kuala Lumpur, same kampung. If the wife had gone a little bit crazy, then he could counsel my wife. But when he came in, he saw me, and then after that, he was asking me a few questions. Then he was asking me, I heard that there are two lady terrorists over there. They're beautiful. Oh, very beautiful, you know, one of them is beautiful. Then he told me, Mokhtar, you have not gone crazy. How is that working? There's no BS before. If I want to browse on these and then you start scolding me, then I'll be very worried about you. Then if I told him I've been behaving this way, no, you are my man. I don't want to give you any of these anti-depressant things. Then you'll be addicted to it. You are the person very jovial, you talk about me. The people ask you, you talk about me. Then slowly it will go off. Then he told me, you can stay here for 1 month, 2 months. No, the government won't allow me to go to work. I'm the chief secretary, I can give you. I can give you a letter. I can give a letter telling the government you need 2 months rest, 3 months rest, 4 months rest. After all, they send me to Peru for this purpose. So the delegation consisted of not only Pak policemen or commandos. I don't know whether they wanted to storm the building and release me. Some people, to this day, they told me, what I heard is that we paid some money, 1 million or 2 million US dollars to get you released. I said, oh, is it? And I'm very happy. I never knew that I'm worth 2 million US dollars. That was 18 years ago.
Okay, thank you very much. And can I invite Mr. Collingwood to send something over to our honorable guest?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, okay. Okay. One for the Yes, this is what you did. Just before I leave. Actually, if you want to know more about Malaysian diplomacy, history of diplomacy for the last 50 years, there is a book published by Wisma Putra, IDFR, #1 Wisma Putra. There are about how many articles, about 20 articles written by the diplomats. And one of them, of course, I was one of the contributors. You must have heard about Shabuddin Rais. He had a film from Dimapur to Manchester. I come from that village, so I put my title of my essay from Dimapur to Ankara, but not to Manchester. So this book is all the experiences of the first batch, early diplomats. And Professor Yeshurun wrote about Malaysia's 50 years of diplomacy. Chandran, Chandran. Well, he mentioned my name, one, on occasion, not that many because I'm not at same, I didn't belong to the first batch. And the footnote also I got my name. So most probably you would like to buy this book, but I'm not selling this book, it's my personal collection. You can get it from NPH. One is Wisma Putra one, 50 years of diplomacy. Singapore also come out with their diplomatic history called the Little Dot, because Indonesia was very angry with Singapore. What is Singapore? Just a little dot on the map. Because a little dot. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, before you all leave, just to let you know, on the 7th of November, okay, keep this date, we have another interesting talk. It is actually a book talk. It's the launching of his book by Ian Bernard. His what was the other one? Spice Islands. He also launches Spice Islands here. So this one is called, it's titled East Indies. Yeah. So keep the appointment with us on the 7th of November. Time 8 p.m. Yeah. So thank you very much. Good night, everyone. Can I just say this? If you are interested to participate in any future talks, maybe you could leave your email address or your contact number with Mr. Bert here or Mr. Colin. Then we can inform you by either by phone or by email.
And because they have to go for time program.